Happy Sunday, y'all. Thank you, Legina. You're so beautiful. And Mel, you're even more beautiful. Thank y'all for this opportunity. Happy Sunday. And yeah, we're gonna just jump right in it because I know you all are probably tired. So let me do this right here. I'm trying to be hip like the millennials and take notes and stuff in my phone. So, how many of you all are ready to get some practical steps around resilience today, especially in light of the pandemic? Did anybody go through anything that about knocked the wind out of them? I know I did. Homelessness, broke, loss of confidence, loss of loved ones. So, I'm definitely looking forward to this conversation today. So, we have on our panel three amazing people, and I'm going to start with Mr. Darrell first. Darrell is a fintech engineer and a technology activist from Houston, Texas. He is the founder of the National Police Data Coalition and the developer evangelist at Icon. I got it right today, yay. His specialty is building productive communities of engineers and other specialists that are committed to learning and making a positive change in the world. Darrell, brother, thank you for joining us today. And next we have Miss Courtney. Miss Courtney, hi. Miss Courtney is an educator, content creator, life coach, counselor, mental health enthusiast, and the CEO of the Allow Yourself Grace brand. And she lives here in Houston, Texas. After receiving her MA in counseling and becoming a nationally certified life coach, she developed a deep love for helping others. Courtney's goal was and is to beat the odds of every little Black girl in her community. She is also the host of Allow Yourself Grace podcast, a space designed for women to encourage women to change their lives by discarding negative thoughts, pivoting in the right direction, and shifting their mindset through cultivating a trauma-free lifestyle. Powerful, Miss Courtney. Thank you for being here. And last but not least, Miss Angelica. Angelica. Thank you, and I've been talking to you, charge it to my head and not my heart, sweetheart. Okay. Angelica is a former undercover agent, international best-selling, award-winning author, motivational speaker, a keynote speaker, and a mindset coach. She's also an executive producer. She is the owner and president of an investigative group firm that specializes in providing case evaluation, suspect interrogation, victim and witness interviewing, expert witness services, evidence, and investigation services. Angelica has worked as a forensic investigator, an interrogator, y'all, a case manager, and a mindset coach. So again, thank you all for being here, and thank y'all for being here. Y'all could have been anywhere on a Sunday afternoon, so I want to honor your intentionality, and I hope and my prayer is that you get something out of this session. So let's jump right into it. So Miss Courtney, from a clinical approach, can you unpack what resilience and stress means to you, and can you give us some practical steps of how to face adversity and what we can do to become resilient?
I think for me, I was hoping I didn't go first, guys, but I'm first. But look, for resilience for me, it's just pushing forward even when you don't want to. My husband and I had this conversation this morning driving here about just getting in the mind frame of it has to get done. And sometimes we can let our trauma, our depression, and all the things get the best of us. But at the end of the day, you have to have your goal in mind and you have to keep it at the forefront. Not to say that you're not gonna have days where, I need a day, right? I need a moment. And that's okay, but what's important is that you continue to push forward. And so I think some steps for that is just to make sure that you write things down. I write things down. I use sticky notes, journals, There's someone downstairs with journals. I encourage everybody to get a journal, write it down. If you're not a journal person, you have the notes section in your phone. I put stuff in my phone all the time, like just in the notes so I can go back to it whenever I think of stuff, because it's important that you are living your purpose and that you're doing something that drives you and that motivates you. And you never know how your story or what you're going through can help someone else. So just make sure that your purpose and what you're doing aligns, and that kind of helps you develop that resilience. It's like, I care about people, right? I want to see everybody succeed. I want to see them do great things. And so for me, if I don't post or I don't record my podcast or I don't meet with my clients, it's kind of like, I'm not really helping anyone, right? If I'm gonna stay in my bed all day and cry about what I'm going through instead of sharing it and pushing forward even when I don't feel like it. Because it's so crazy how everything's running together. Someone said earlier, it's like, it's not about you. Sometimes you go into something thinking that it's about you, but it's bigger than you, right? It's bigger than what you're doing. Like, sharing your story is bigger than you. So even when I don't feel like it, I end up getting blessed in the process, and they end up ministering to me in the process. So it's kind of like, it was for me. It made me feel better, even though my goal was to help them. So.
Beautiful. Thank you, Courtney. So, Darrell, we spoke about this yesterday. You intrigued me, brother, in so many ways. I know that you've had to push through and be resilient just in the mere inheritance of what you do for a living, being a fintech, a technology engineer. Yesterday, you all asked him to unpack what a technology activist was. Has anybody ever heard that terminology? Okay. I'm dating myself. Okay, well, yeah, thank you. Activist. Hacktivist. Oh, wow. Maybe we can have a sidebar. You can unpack that for me, okay? I'm intrigued by that terminology. So in this space of being in a predominantly, what was that word you used? A predominantly non-people of color environment in such a technological, place. What does resilient look like for you, and how do you push through? How did you attain your goals?
I think a lot of it comes down to, do you have a deep connection with your mission and what it is that you're doing in the space where you're working? I'm born in Aries. I learned early on that I had a natural tendency to not finish things that I started. And one of the things that I kind of committed to myself to do was number one, end that practice and make sure that once I get started on a path, that I'm gonna make sure it's something that I see it through. And number two, be very selective over where I apply my energy, so I don't end up in a situation where I'm overextending myself and feeling like I have to break off commitments that I've made. So between those two, being able to make sure that when I start an action, it is the right action, and then continually reminding myself of that, bringing that top of mind again and again, is something that helps me stay focused and keep going forward.
Beautiful. Just a really quick follow-up step. How did you become aware that you're a person that doesn't follow through?
Really, it was introspection. Just introspection. I think it also helped. I was pretty young. I was in that state of life where you're really starting to determine what your future is going to be, and trying to understand who you are. That those teenage, like early young adult years, where you're really, awkwardly moving your way through life and understanding who you are. That was a big part of that process, was starting to see those patterns and try to find ways that I could correct them.
Beautiful. Thank you, Darrell. Angelica, sis, man, would you give us the honor of unpacking what resilience means to you, and if you would share a little bit of your story so that we qualify for these beautiful people, that is not, what the practical steps that you'll share with us wasn't developed in a lab. These practical steps are things that you've done to overcome the story that you'll share with us really quick.
Yes. So we talked about COVID, right? So when I think about resilience, I think about three words: We are adaptable, we are coachable, and we are teachable. And resilience to me is a choice, and it's something that we have within ourselves. We are born with it. And it's really that fight to flight, right? And for me, I'll tell you guys a little story. So I worked for the government for 17 years. I was a undercover agent for 2 of those years and a interrogator profiler for the rest. And I still do it. I contract with the Department of Homeland Security, so I get contracted to speak to cartel members. So I speak to drug lords every day. Well, maybe like 3 times a month. So what happened for me was, obviously I dealt with trauma growing up as a child, but now as a professional during COVID, I was approached to write the story of my life. And I said, well, cool, let's do this thing, right? But I knew that if I wrote the book in the way that I wanted to write it and the way I wanted to share it to the world, that it would come with some consequences, with a potential of getting blacklisted and losing my entire government career. Keep in mind, this was a career that I started when I was 23. I'm now 40, for those that are wondering. So, long story short, I wrote the book. I left the government full-time 2013. I started my own company, and I was a contractor for the government. I had 6 contracts where I was getting flown to different areas to do high-risk interrogations, investigations. Most of them were in penitentiaries where they had terrorists, drug dealers, murderers, name it, the scum of the earth, that were being tried on a federal level. So I write the book. Needless to say, because of COVID, we weren't able to fly. So I was now at home and I couldn't do my work. So I look over at my husband and I said, hey, I don't got any money, because I was getting paid by case. So he said, well, you better get a job. So I said, okay. So I went to the DA office and I got I was a supervisor in the wire room night shift. So I had a newborn, I had a 3-year-old, I was pumping, and now I was working night shift. So I'm doing that. I get approached to write my story. I write the book. I wrote the book in 3 weeks. People think that's crazy, but I was also in a lot of pain to share my story, that when I wrote it, it just came out. And I was like, let me get all this out of my system and into this piece of paper or computer. My husband reads the book before I went to editing, and he gets triggered by it. So I come home from night shift one day, and he's like, I need to talk to you. And I'm like, can it wait? I'm tired. I can't do this right now. My breasts are full of milk. You know how it is, ladies. He says, no, can't wait. Sits me down and says, I need to tell you something that's going to change your life and my life. I said, okay, well, come on, let's go. He tells me that he read my book and he was triggered by it, and that him and his family had been part of the Mexican cartel. So I'm sitting there thinking, you did me like this, MF? I literally had my gun right here in the back of my holster. My hand went like this. I was gonna kill him. I said, in my mind, it took probably like 1 or 3 minutes for your brain to process and then react. But because I was a professional in my field and I had dealt with this type of population, I was able to say, okay, girl, calm the F down and interrogate him. Separate wife from him. So I let go of my gun. I sat down and I said, tell me more. For 2 hours, he tells me everything. That was the most authentic my husband had ever been in the 10 years of marriage that we were together. Now, you guys can kind of go from there. That's the end of book 1. I then had to tell him, I said, you realize I have to report this. So I had to report it, because if I didn't, guess who's gonna sit in federal prison? Me. I was the one that had given the oath to the government. So I reported, he was for it. The story continues on, which will be in book 2, but it turns out that he was a child of the cartel here in Houston. He grew up in the cartel. So he was used to the drugs and the killings and all this stuff, which I thought was crazy, because here I am interrogating his family, pretty much. here in Houston. I go under federal investigation for 7 weeks because they thought that I had married into the cartel to steal secrets for them. But the moral of the story is, guys, the worst time of my life ended up becoming the best time of my life. I published the book. I became an international bestseller the week it published. I literally left the house, this lavish lifestyle we were in, with nothing, when my 2 kids in tow. And I said to him, I said, I don't want the house, I don't want anything. You keep your drug money, I'm out. But before I left, I said, I need you to sign this piece of paper, boo. And in that piece of paper said he was giving me permission to write his story in my book, which ended up being the last 2 chapters. And he's like, your stupid little book. All right, I'll sign it. Book hit bestseller, and they got picked up by Hollywood to become a movie. So now this little piece of paper from this little stupid book, yeah, guess who's all right? Guess who's gonna be all right? So I literally left this life, got investigated for 7 weeks. They found out that I wasn't obviously involved. Phones tapped, emails, a whole shebang. I was now on the other side of the interrogation table. So I'm sitting in the interrogation room like, you really gonna ask me that? I'm the professional here. I'm the world-class interrogator. I'm the one that's supposed to be on the other side. But what I wanna leave you with is that when you think your life is over and you're rock bottom, that's when you recreate yourself. And you get to recreate yourself over and over and over again. Not just 1 time or 5 times. So I always tell people, the worst thing that can happen to you is the best thing that can happen to you. So, here we are.
Wow. Wow, thank you for sharing that, Angelica. Wow. So I'm of the belief, you all, that how dare I ever show up in a space and think that I know what people in here need? And in the essence and the tone and the vein of you could have been anywhere, but you chose to be here. I want, if everybody's okay, for you all, if you have questions, to ask these beautiful individuals on the panel around resilience, around anything that you heard them say that might like, tell me more. So I mentioned this yesterday. We all know the saying that in Vegas, that saying, anybody know the saying that people say in Vegas? What is that? What's the saying? You're a rebel. I like you, brother. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So I would respectfully ask that if someone shares something here today, that it stays in this room. And the only person that we talk to about it is our creator, whoever the creator is for us. So with that, wow, does anybody have any questions? I'm going to get you next, Liz. What's your name? Yes.
Yeah, so I'll kind of illustrate that with a little bit of a story of my own. I had when I was relatively young, went through a period where I pretty much lost everything within a matter of like a month or so. I went from, being with the woman that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. I had a, business that I was working on that was growing and everything like that, was, moving into a new place, like all that. To within weeks, all of that was gone. Our CTO went and robbed the company, ran off with all the funds and everything we had. Me and my fiance broke up, ended up moving out of the home that we were living in together, came back here to Houston, And when I say I was low, I had never felt darkness like that in my life. That was, it was something. I ended up meeting someone who was a health professional. She became a good friend of mine, and one of the things that she continually told me is, you really have to take things day by day. You really have to take things day by day. And just imagine that you're going through a tunnel. You're going through, some sort of darkness. You don't necessarily see what's in front of you, but you know that if you keep moving, you keep going in the same direction, at some point, you're gonna hit that light. At some point, that's gonna end. And you're not really gonna see that coming. You're not really gonna be able to feel whether that is, imminent or anything along those lines. But you do have to know when you're moving in a positive direction and be able to identify the steps for you that are gonna bring you out of that. Whether that's in my position, that was really about getting, moving, transitioning from this business to rebuilding it, step by step, brick by brick. We had to rebuild the entire code base. We had to really resurrect that from the dead, which was a process, and that kept me focused. Another thing that I do is I always focus on my health and, exercise, making sure that I'm not too trapped in my mind and letting some of that stress come out through my body and through physical activity, and helping to refine myself that way. And really, the persistence is what's gonna pay. The persistence is what's gonna pay. The other thing something that one of my best personal therapeutic tools is just writing. I do what's called morning pages. And so this is where ideally you do it every day, but however often, makes sense for you, you kind of journal. You write out what you're going through in your life. You write out how you feel about it, where you want that to go, how you want that to end up. And the act of taking, what can be very chaotic thoughts out of your mind, putting them on paper, reading them as you're writing them and starting to feel what that means to you is something that's extremely helpful for clarification and helping you to know, hey, I'm being really negative here. Is this really the truth? Is there something else to this that I'm missing? Am I just, a little bit too being down on myself and ruminating on something that's unnecessary? And can I reword this? Can I rewrite that? And that process really, again, takes you out of a spiral, which can really be just generated by your own thoughts that don't necessarily have to correspond with reality, and bring you into a more positive place.
And I'm just gonna add a little plug, shameless plug here. Allow yourself grace, right? I think we're so hard on ourselves. Like we're like, I need to get this done, and I'm lacking over here. I'm doing great over here, but I'm lacking over here. I think balance. When we talk about balance, we hear this word all the time, and it's like you're only one person, right? And so there's gonna be days that there's just some things that lack, and that's okay. And that's okay, as long as you know that you gave your best. And so I like to say balance really doesn't exist, because if I'm over here, there's no way I can be over here too, right? I can't be two places at one time. And so I'm going to water where my feet are planted. So if I'm here and I'm at Melanin Mines, everything else has to wait, right? Because I'm here and I'm giving 100% here. I can't be at home and be here at the same time. So I think just allowing yourself a little grace and just know that wherever you are, that's where you can be at that time. And it's okay that something doesn't get done right now. I'll get to it later, okay? So I think just we're so hard on ourselves, and we want to be a million places at once, and we want to get all these things done. But if you really just slow down and just lead with grace, everything will start to fall into place. I used to be the type of person that I would get really aggressive when something wasn't going right. And it's just like, I'm mad, I'm screaming, I'm slamming doors. But at the end of the day, nothing's getting accomplished when I'm doing that. And so if I just take a moment, calm myself down and say, you know what? This is where I'm at. I have to deal with where I'm at and what I'm doing at the moment. That has helped me so much. and everything always works itself out. And I just believe that, you're not going to be given anything in this life that you're not equipped to handle. You have all the tools you need inside of you already. And so don't overthink it. We spend so much time here that, we don't put anything into action. We don't actually start on the goals because we're so in here. We're comparing ourselves to everybody. We're on social media looking and we think we're behind. But run your own race at your own pace. And always, always, guys, allow yourself grace.
Beautiful.
To piggyback on what she said, for me, when you're rock bottom, there's only one way to go. That's one thing. The second thing is forgiveness to yourself first. The decision of forgiveness is 1%, 99% is action. Because without action, there's no change.
Beautiful, Angelica. Thank y'all. What's your name, Bubba?
My name is Octavia.
Hi,
Hey,
Octavia.
y'all. It's my first time talking about it out loud, so I just ask for y'all to be patient with me.
Yes, ma'am. I got you, sis. Uh-huh.
So,
You don't, okay. You want me to hold it for you?
it's,
Whatever's comfortable for you. I got you.
So I am a
Got you. And you have licensed people here to hold space for you.
I'm sorry.
Take your time.
Y'all, okay. I'm a survivor of, okay, DV. It's been taking me almost 2 years to write my story because it's so painful. And I didn't realize that I was in that situation until COVID, until 2020, where all we could do was sit in the house. I actually moved to Houston from Louisiana, escaping that situation. So my mind has been trapped between two extremes, like I'm not in that situation anymore, but also how do I redefine my life after pretty much what's been invested to me or what I felt life was during that time. So I guess 2 questions. Were you all afraid of, in sharing your story, that you can be offed and beyond being shunned from the family? Because I'm already there.
Yes.
I'm already breaking generational curses.
Girl, I'm gonna give you a book because you need to read my book, okay? I'm gonna, if I can start, because I can connect with you, but
Yeah. Okay. So your first question was what now?
Were you afraid of being killed in writing your story because of how much you're revealing, how the cycles, even spiritually, what comes with that, revealing how the enemy works, revealing his strategies, how that can affect you, your legacies. That's my first question. And
Okay.
how were you able to push through that?
Yeah.
Because now my family they're moving to Houston, and that's a fear of mine. In sharing that, how do I still walk in, I guess, in redefining my life? How do I keep staying
Yeah.
resilient?
thank you for that. Thank you for your courage. So when I decided to publish my book, I got blacklisted. So if you guys know what that means that there is a list with my name on it. So I know you guys watch that Blacklist show. So I was blacklisted by Department of Defense. What that means is I can never go back to work for Department of Defense. They blacklisted me because I decided to publish my book. And in my book, I do talk about my experience in the government world, a male-dominant world, as a brown-skinned girl in a male-dominant job. There's no women that look like me in this job. And if there is, they're counted for. So blacklist was one. I was not afraid of my life because if I did end up dead, there was only one person to point at. And I get this question a lot about the cartel. I have been working for the cartel, with the cartel as an interrogator for 16 years. If I ended up dead in a ditch, I'm gonna be plastered on CNN. Ex-agent dead in a ditch. That's too much noise for the cartel. The cartel doesn't have time for media. They're moving millions and millions of dollars across the border. So I did get blacklisted, so I lost my entire career. And my sister decided to not talk to me. I haven't spoken to my sister since I published the book. A lot of my family disowned me because I revealed family secrets. I talked about incest in my family. I talked about molestation. I talked about domestic violence. I talked about things get swiped under the rug in our communities, Black and Hispanic communities. Oh, just walk it off. Nobody needs to know. Don't say anything. My grandfather tried to rape me, and I went to my mother, and she was, no, don't say anything. Nothing happened. When I told her I was molested as a child, she said, oh, that happened when you were 3. You're 17 now. You should be good. But what I learned was our parents were never taught how to deal with these things, so they imposed this on us. So that was the way that they would deal with it, was to not deal with it. So to give you grace and give you support, you have to make a choice. They say that the number one thing we don't have control of is our mind, and the number one thing we have control of is our mind. We have to make a choice that our past is not going to define us, and nobody else can tell you anything but yourself. So you have to make a stand and say, I am not tied to the past, I am not the past, and the past does not define me. In fact, a second ago was the past.
Thank you. And let me piggyback off. I'm going to give you some real practical tools, okay? Because I'm intentional about having these hard conversations in our community around domestic violence. I was much like you. I didn't know that I was in a domestic violence situation, and it wasn't until he hit me in the face and knocked my teeth loose, and I went to the Houston Area Women's Center during the pandemic, and I didn't know I was in a domestic violence situation because I watched it go on as a child. So to be hit and to hit was what love looked like, right? And so a practical tool that I would challenge you to, because it's gonna be hard. But guess what? It was hard being in the relationship, so we know we have the strength, right? Domestic violence survivors are one of the strongest people that I know on this earth, because every single day we're surviving. Every single day we're walking on eggshells, trying not to make our mates upset because we don't know if we're going to get slapped or talked to, because verbal and mental and emotional abuse is just as damaging, you all, because physical abuse, the wounds are healed. My teeth bonded back, right? But the emotion part. So seek out a trauma-informed therapist, because it's going to be hard, and you're going to want someone that is licensed to help you unpack what you're going through. And just tell your truth in that. Play full out with your therapist. Don't hold anything back. Don't hold those tears back. I lost my mom when she was 47 years old to cancer, and I have no scientific proof of this, but I know it was because of the trauma that was trapped in her body. It manifested in things. So you got to get that stuff out. So you have children? Okay, do you want children? You have nieces and nephews? Somebody call you auntie or somebody call you cousin? You owe it to your family. We owe it to our ancestors, you all, to do it a different way. Like Angelica said, the people that came before us, they didn't know, but now we know we have to do it a different way. And Angelica talks about this, the power of forgiving. I forgave my ex. I forgave the man that sexually molested me and my children, me and my sister as children. And from that, with a licensed therapist and lots of prayer and a spiritual mother, my light has begun to shine. And all this stuff, I was homeless during the pandemic. I'm talking about didn't have a pot to piss in, y'all, or a window to throw it out of. But I started to do the work, and my light started to shine. And let me tell you, you see this brown-skinned, handsome hunk of man right there?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
Love it.
Yeah, and so my light started to shine, and now I'm living the life that I deserve to live all my life, but I've had to put in the work. A licensed therapist, beautiful. And thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you for
Thank
sharing.
you.
Yeah.
Anybody else have a question?
I know you guys got them. Come on. We just gave you a lot.
Yes. Right.
What is it?
What's your name, King?
Rajay. And it's not a heavy question, but like as an interrogator, like, 'cause I'm guessing now you're single. I'm not trying to shoot a shot or nothing, but like when you're dating, like how does like being an interrogator, like do you just always walk around and like even dating or just being around people, you're like that's BS, like that's BS. Like
Yes,
you just
I do.
reading people all day.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this yesterday in the relationship. It's really hard for me to date, guys, because I know when you're lying, one, right? Two, when you're on a date, you send your representative. You send the best version of yourself to this date. But I can tell a mile away that you're lying. But I'm not the type of person that psychoanalyzes people. All I have to do is listen. And that's what a lot of us don't do, is we don't listen because we want to talk. But if you literally sit there and listen to what your partner is saying, they're telling you everything. So I'm a world-class interrogator, and I have a very low admission rate. So what that, or a very high admission rate. So what that means is I can get you to confess very quickly. And the way I do that is by listening. It's not by smacking you in the face and telling you I'm about to kill you. And I don't know why people think that it is a tactic, but it's a very ignorant tactic, because it's like a dog. If you hit it, the dog's gonna bite you. So yes, it's horrible and it's hard because I'm single. If anybody has any brothers out there.
Angelica's single. She promised not to smack you to interrogate you. She's gonna listen.
And really, here's the other thing. If you Google me, everything comes up. So you already know that if you're going on a date with me, Google your girl, because you may not want to go on a date with me.
Beautiful. Thank you, Angelica. Yes, beautiful.
Okay, one last question. What is your definition of generational curses, and what has been your like pattern to break it?
Ms. Courtney, you want?
And why is it so hard to break?
Beautiful question.
Yeah, I would say for me, it's do the opposite. So if they're going left, I'm going the other way. And I was talking to someone about this yesterday. You have to do what's best for you, right? So if you know that what your parents did. So as we grow older, we get more wiser. And so we start to get out and we meet people and we see like there's different ways of life, and that maybe something that our parents were doing wasn't necessarily the right thing to do, but we thought it was because that's what we saw. And I always say, people only do what they know and what they see. So we have to model the behavior we want to see. And so when you're a kid growing up, your parents are modeling for you the behavior that they think that, you should display, right? And so what happens in this house stays in this house. When you start to get out and you get educated and you see like people are actually sitting down at family dinners and they're communicating about how their day was. And it's not like you can't tell anybody anything, like, because we've created spaces like this. It's like, man, I don't want to live like that. I don't want my kids to live like that, feeling like they can't tell me anything. I have to hide stuff. And so I think just determining what works for you and what's best for you, that's a great way to break those generational curses, because everything that my mom did or my dad did is not necessarily the right choices for me. The choices that they made may not be the things that are good for me. And so I think just figuring out what you like and what makes you feel good, the food you eat, what you're doing every day. Like, how does that make you feel? How does your body react? Do you feel like you have a clear mind? You have a clear heart? Like, those are the things that I would go off of. Just what makes me feel good and own it. Like, this is what I'm doing, and you're doing. Like, I literally sit on the phone with my family sometimes. I'm like, yeah, sure. And they give me all the advice because, right, they have all the answers. And I'm just like, yeah. And I'm like, I'm not ever doing that. You don't have to be disrespectful about it, but just, I'm like, I can show you better than I can tell you because I'm going to go over here and you're going to see me on Instagram in this other country that you told me not to go to, that you've never been to. Period. Like, just do what's best for you and do what makes you feel good.
Thank you, Courtney. One more question, and we're going to do a quick exercise. Oh, or maybe we won't do the quick exercise. Let me, bear with me just a second. I'm a coming, y'all. What's your name?
Hi, my name is Key. I'm the owner of a workspace and winery, and of course, it's not a lot of minorities in that field. So my question to you guys are, how do you build up your confidence to do the hard things when you really don't have, whether it's generational changes or you being the only person in that field? How do you deal with building up confidence to do the hard things?
Darrell, you want to take this one? Thank you, sweetheart.
Yeah, I think confidence comes from experience at the end of the day. A big part for me breaking into the tech field, I came into it, young, self-taught, and really just started out from the very bottom, doing whatever sort of work that I could do, coding and things like that, to eventually working my way into different startups and going through that. I always pushed myself to just try and break new ground, even if it was something that was uncomfortable for me, even if it was something that was new to me. I started doing public speaking relatively early in my career. I was probably about 25, 26 years old. I had, started a business by that point, and so I was starting to really share some of the work that I was doing and those sorts of things. And the more that I put myself in those positions, the more comfortable and the more normal it felt. I was born extremely introverted person. I'm a little bit further along in that path now, but that is still my nature. And it took me a while to really become comfortable putting myself out there in the way that I could build my reputation, right, and start to earn those different contracts and start to earn those different positions in these larger companies. But it really came down to being willing to start out initially feeling kind of silly, feeling like I was awkwardly maneuvering and didn't know what I was doing. And at the end of the day, you get through that period, you start to develop a little bit of a rhythm, you start to develop a feeling for what is right for you in that particular field, in that community. And believe it or not, people will see this change in you as well, and you'll start to realize that they see even before you do when you start to develop that confidence, and they'll start to approach you, and it will really just reinforce itself at that point. So really just don't be afraid to walk forward even if you don't see the path.
Beautiful, Darrell. Thank you so much. Miss Danielle. Hey, sweetheart.
Hello, my name is Danielle. My question is, if you're in a relationship and say your partner's going through something, and obviously you want to help them, but you're going through something as well, how do you navigate that where y'all both feel supported and get through it?
Yeah, that's an easy one for me. I was married for 10 years, and we were both in individual therapy, and we were both in couples therapy. So we would work on ourselves individually, and then we would work as a unit with a licensed therapist. I think having that neutral party, professional, is key to dealing with conflict, because together, if there's conflict between you, you definitely need somebody that's looking from the outside in. So therapy, y'all, therapy.
One last question. How do you pronounce your name, beautiful? Leilani. That is beautiful, Miss Leilani. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I guess this is more directed to Darrell, but it could be for either of you. As far as creating a culture in the workplace when people see you as the cultured person because you're of color and the rest of the room is not, how do you try and create I don't know if allyship is the best word, but like community maybe. When not everyone looks like you, what would be, I guess, the start with that?
Powerful question. Wow, Darrell, you want to take that, and then maybe from a clinical standpoint, Ms. Courtney?
Yeah, I'll speak to this a little bit. I will say I've been a remote worker since 2014, so a lot of my culture was not being there. Coming onto a call from Thailand or something like this, I was that guy. I was just like, yeah. One of the big things that I did is whenever I was in town at whatever company that I was working for, I always try to host events. And I always try to create spaces for different people to gather and start to build those personal relationships. And for me, that was really how I started to get to know the people that I was working with at a more visceral level. Something else that I will say that is more relevant, I guess, to when you're creating a business, this is a big deal, right? Creating culture is extremely important when you're building a business from the ground up, because that culture that you create initially is going to carry on. It's going to implicate everything that comes afterwards. And so for me, I'm very intentional about how I communicate with the people that I'm working with, how I share that vision, but also how I engage with them on a personal level, and make sure that I understand what's going on in their lives at various times, what's going on with their kids, what's going on with any hobbies that they have, where are they feeling emotionally at various things that are going on with their lives and their relationships and things. There's a level of inability to really influence someone. You have to care about them, right? Because if they can sense from the very beginning that you don't care, no matter how well you're doing, whatever you're showing and everything like that, it's not going to have any impact because you don't have anything invested in them. When you start investing in people, that's when you'll even have the permission to begin to influence them and begin to share what you bring to the table and your way of doing things with them.
Beautiful. How about you?
I think Darrell answered the question perfectly, but I will say the social and emotional connection, that find something to connect on socially. He worded it perfectly. Just finding out about them, engaging in conversation, and then you being confident in who you are helps, because people can see that. They can see if you're confident or you're not so sure, but be confident. Hi, I'm Leilani. How are you? Engage in conversation. Don't be afraid to enter the room and be like, hi guys, how are you? Step in there and get involved with everybody and just interact as much as you can and keep pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. But I used to set up little events. So if it was Cinco de Mayo, and so he gave my answer perfectly. But just try to find out more about the cultures around you and everybody's culture in the workplace, and then you can make everybody feel included, learn something new about them, and then when you see them again, you can ask them about it, and so that starts to build rapport with people, and it makes it more of a inviting environment.
Beautiful. So y'all, as we close, a couple of things. Please make sure and shout out Melanin Minds on your social media, in your immediate ecosystem, please. And follow us, stay connected. Let's, grow in this thing called life. I wanted to do an exercise really, really quick. Does anybody, everybody have one of these, or does anybody need one? We're gonna do a goal. We're gonna set a goal if you're up for it. So in the face of all this experience and knowledge, if you need a book, just let us know. My king will pass it out to you. I would like for us all to write down what is one goal that or step, right? What is a goal, and what is one step that we're gonna take today to accomplish that goal? So let me make sure I'm clear on that. What is a goal that you have? And what is one step you're going to take today to accomplish that goal? So I think we're out of time. Okay. So just really quick, does anybody want to share? And then we'll be done. Let us have it, Darrell.
So actually something that I heard yesterday that really made me just stuck in my mind, the gratitude journaling. I think it's a great exercise that I've gotten away from, and so I'm making a commitment to start doing that again.
Beautiful. Can you define gratitude journals for us really quick?
Yeah, gratitude journaling is really at the end of every day, you know, taking a moment to think back through the experiences that you've had and what you've gone through, and try to pick out those positive things that you felt brought you forward, and just to remind yourself of the joy that you experience on every given day.
Beautiful. And you're going to start gratitude journaling when?
Immediately.
Come on, Darrell. Do
Can I say one
what it
last
do,
thing?
brother. Absolutely.
So I have one last thing to say that somebody told me one day, and that really changed the course of my mindset, was dream with your eyes open. And that's all I needed to hear.
So in that vein, when we're dreaming with our eyes open, Angelica, what is one step you're going to do today to make that, manifest that?
So a dream doesn't exist, right? But it becomes a reality when you put action behind it. So make sure that you put action behind your dreams. So I applied for TED Talk, and I got in.
Yay, congratulations,
thank you.
sis.
But I started to manifest it, and then when you throw your dreams out there and you share them with people, you now are sharing your dreams, and you are becoming accountable to other people, which then makes you get in action. So
You better break that thing all the way down and build it back up. One last one. Anybody else want to share? And be held accountable to the universe for manifesting what we want our lives to look like?
let me know, because anybody that comes around me gets stuff done and things happen. So
Okay, with that, thank y'all again. Follow us on Instagram. Legina, Mel, you all absolutely rock, sisters.
thank you.
Thank you, guys.